this is my grandpa, Charles Klingsik from Michigan. We're going to interview him about the Depression. Did you have a job during the Depression?
Well, I finished grade school in 1930, and at that time I bought 2 paper routes and delivered papers for 6 years at between 185 and 200 customers every day for 6 days a week. So I earned some money to save up and pay my expenses and have a little bit of start off to college.
How old were you at the time?
In 1930, I was 14 years old.
And how much did you make from the paper out, per paper?
The customers paid 12 cents a week for papers, and I got 2 cents of that. It was 1 3/4 cents at first, and then the profit went up to 2 cents per customer. So I was making about $10 a week as those years went along.
What did your family do, like your mother and father? What kind of jobs did they have during the Depression?
Women didn't work very much at that time, and my father was a minister, and he supported the family, which was my mother and my sister and myself. And his wages weren't great, but on the other hand, to the congregation, well, we managed and had enough to live on.
Did the government make any jobs for the people during the time?
That is a very involved story because the election in 1932 brought Franklin D. Roosevelt into the presidency. The banks all closed the week after the inauguration in March of 1933. And from there on, Roosevelt and Congress had the job of trying to bring the country into a solvency because there was no money circulating at all. And one of the first things was the NRA, National Recovery Administration, which set up policies of price control for all businesses. Another thing was the Works Progress Administration, or Authority, I think it was called, and that was a government program which involved hiring people to do menial jobs, such as repaving streets by taking up the bricks and leveling off the sand and turning the bricks over again and smoothing them out. That was done all over the country at government expense. The government provided the tools, shovels, and the brooms, and that accomplished quite a bit in getting people to work. And the third step was the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which involved young men who were hired by the government to do all conservation jobs around the country, cleaning out streams and building dams and creeks and small bridges and picnic areas, things like that. And they sent them to the mountains, to the countrysides, wherever there would be work that they could do. So the government did a lot. In addition, to carry the story a little further, Social Security was established in 1937 in the deep years of the Depression, which was a compulsory way of taking money from employed individuals and investing it in government so that later on, when they retired, they could get money back. It was a lot simpler in those days than it is nowadays. Social Security takes care of disability and a lot of other things too. But the government did a lot. That's a long answer to your question.
You said the banks were shut down a week after Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected. Did you lose any money in the banks when they closed or anything?
Mm-hmm. My father happened to go into the bank where he had his monies, such as they were. The day before the banks closed, he had an appointment on some legal business there. And he saw all the activity because people were withdrawing money right and left. And he said, "This is not right." And he came home and he got together the family bank books, such as they were. And he asked me for my bank account, and I gave it in my bank book. And that was just about closing time. And he dashed off and withdrew what money he could and salvaged some cash that way. And then the next morning, he came into my bedroom before I was up, showed me the morning paper with great big headlines indicating the banks had closed. I had a $54 school savings about, I think, $30 of that money back, but the rest was lost.
So you only got like $34 back total out of everything?
30 out of the 54.
And then your bank books the previous day, you got all that money back?
Yes. There was no federal deposit insurance at that time, no FDIC. So you were at risk in having money in the banks. And people all over the country lost money. Because those banks never opened, some of them.
What are the prices of like gas and the salaries of working people and stuff like that? Do you know?
You shouldn't ask. I worked in the grocery store during the mid-1930s, and bread was 8 cents a loaf for the regular size loaf. The Pullman size loaf, long loaf, was 12 cents. Butter was 33 cents a pound. Cigarettes, 15 cents a pack. Gasoline, and I had a car when I graduated from high school, a used car, 17 cents a gallon. Haircuts were 25 cents, and we got by with what monies we had. Well, you asked about wages. Working in the store, I got 25 cents an hour. The time element was 12 hours a day, from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And for a full week's work, 6 days, 12 hours a day, I got $18, which was a lot of money in that time.
What was your home life like? Were your parents considered, did you have many struggles during that time, or were you pretty much well off? Or?
Well, we were comfortable because with what I was earning, I was paying all my personal expenses, my own haircuts, things like that, gas money when it came to that. I could provide for. My dad, as a minister, would get some donations from the congregation because they'd bring apples in or potatoes in from the farms and help to provide for the family table that way. And I remember my mother would take grapes, and when she got a harvest of a bushel of grapes from somebody, and make grape juice, and we had real heavy grape juice that she kept on the shelves for the winter. And whereas nowadays people have frozen orange juice, we had grape juice we could survive on, among other things. Things were so different. I should mention this. People born since 1950 or so have to keep in mind that nothing that you think of now was true in those days. There was no frozen food, for example, no freezers, no fax, no stereo, no TV. Dial telephones were just starting to come. All kinds of things were different.
Did the Depression affect your education at all?
No, I was able to finish high school on schedule, and fortunately I received a scholarship for a year's tuition at the University of Toledo, and that amounted to $100. And the only thing I had to pay was my activities fees, which were $6.50 for the whole year, and the books that I bought. But other than that, my whole expense for college for that year, $100, was paid for. And the travel back and forth, I had to pay out of my earnings. But other than that, I was able to go on to college.
What sources of entertainment did you have? What did you do as entertainment in those days?
Well, I can remember my mother taking my sister and myself to vaudeville shows, which were typical in those days, whereas nowadays you have movies and all kinds of TV entertainment. Stage shows that way were the entertainment at the time. She would give us a quick supper on Monday night, about 5 o'clock. We would walk downtown, which was about 10 blocks away, the theater, get in on the matinee prices just before 6 o'clock when the evening prices took effect, and we'd see the full program of vaudeville and movie for the afternoon price. That was one way of getting public entertainment. On a personal basis, I didn't I think it was probably around 50 cents for the matinee or 75 cents. I'm not sure in recollecting. My mother paid for that. At that time, I didn't have to worry about that cost.
Where were you at this time? Did you live in a larger city?
I was living in Toledo, in the old section of Toledo called Lower Town, and my father was the pastor there at Salem Lutheran Church, which was the first Lutheran church in Toledo, founded in 1842. But my grandfather had been there since 1901, and then my father succeeded him in 1910.
So you were born in Toledo and had lived there up to that time?
I was born in the parsonage because we didn't have hospital advantages in those days very much. So I lived in that parsonage all my growing years until I went away to college.
How has the Depression affected your present-day life?
I learned the value of money, and I learned the value of making things do. I learned how to remake things so that they worked, fix things. And among other things that are related to the Depression, but probably should be told too, my mother and father, among other things that I learned before the Depression and have remembered since, my parents set up 3 little banks that we kept on the kitchen shelves with the dishes. One was labeled Save, one was labeled Spend, and one was labeled Give. And the allowance that I received from my parents for the little chores I did around the house during my growing years was 25 cents a week, same as my sister, who washed dishes and things like that. And I was instructed to set 1 nickel aside for Give, 1 nickel aside for Spend, and the dime for Save. Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't quite come up with
Maybe
25
20 cents. It'd probably be 5, 10, and 10.
Yeah, it was 5, 10, and 10. Anyhow, we set aside the coins that way, and the give money was for Sunday school offerings or for charity, and the spend money was for what things I wanted to save up for and buy, and then the save money was what we kept for some time when we just had to have money and kept it in reserve. But that principle has been good for people like me ever since, to always plan ahead and have something for charity, something for oneself, and something in reserve for the future. I think other people learn that too, different ways. Next question.
What the Depression? Do you think it'd be a good idea to have another one to teach people stuff?
Well, it's like a car accident. You don't wish that on anybody. But on the other hand, if you go through something like that, you're bound to benefit if you take seriously what you learn. And the Depression was one of the best things that's happened in this country. The value of people, the value of money, the value of jobs, the value of future, and the value of family particularly became very clear for all of us. And I think the whole country has benefited by the Depression experience. It wouldn't be a bad idea if all of us went through some of that to some degree without having to.
Are there any other positive aspects of the Depression that were good, that you were glad that you went through some of the things that?
Well, I think all of our American society became more conscious of what government means, because this country was founded upon individualism. But in a depression, in any crisis, you lose your individualism and become dependent upon others and begin to realize what interdependence means. And that's not just family, but neighbors and strangers all become one big family when there's a need to be. The barter system, for example, began to make people exchange services with one another. We could use a lot of that kind of understanding nowadays. It's not just money that makes people function, but that concern, that love, that caring relationship is what is good. And in addition to dependence upon government, the fact of looking ahead and planning for something other than just self-satisfaction, planning to have a reserve, planning to build a future and really struggling for it. College education was something that wasn't going to happen. You had to plan for that and plan for the job beyond the college education. The Depression was helpful for things like that.
Thank you for talking to us and helping us out.